On today's episode, we're going to be installing this Airlift Load Lifter 7500 XL Ultimate on the 3500 single axle Duramax here. This is a 17 Duramax, and we've been towing a big fifth wheel with it and needs a little bit of help. So we're going to be putting this kit on it right here. Let's get started. This kit comes with two pieces, so you have to buy the bags and the controller separately. So inside the box, we're going to start with the bags. We're going to get the bags all installed first, and then we'll move on to the controller second. It comes packaged just like this. We've got bags and some brackets, and a nice set of instructions here. So we're going to get the truck up in the air on a lift. If you don't have a lift, you can use jack stands. That's just fine too. These are a supplement, so you're not necessarily disconnecting the whole suspension when you do this. They should be able to bolt in place. Alright, so step one in the instructions, get rid of the factory bump stops. You can do that by, you can use a hammer and a flathead and kind of go up at an angle. Excuse me. And then you can just pry them down and they'll pop out of there. It may take a couple tries. Alright, so just to give you an example, once you get them pried down to about this point, they'll start to pop out and you can just grab them and they'll come loose. Next up, we're going to get rid of that bolt and that bracket right there. These are 13 millimeters, so there's that one. And then we're going to take this bracket off here on the striker plate, this one on the passenger side on the striker plate, and there is one hiding right behind the shock on the passenger side on the front side of the striker plate. So all those bolts have to come out for us to proceed. Alright, I'm going to show you how these get assembled. I don't have my tripod today, so I couldn't do it all at once, but you have these circular plates here. They're all for the same, so it doesn't matter. Obviously, make sure that you're lining up your holes. And then you've got a bottom bracket and a top bracket. And then you have these Allen-headed flathead panhead screws that will pass through the two layers. So it goes through the bracket and through the plate into the bag itself. Now there's a nice little diagram in the instructions, but you've got left and the other one says R for right, and essentially this bracket's going to go on top so that the fitting can pass through, and the other bracket's going to go on the bottom. Now the other bracket has 4 bolt holes in it, and you want this bracket shifted forward towards the front of the vehicle a little bit. So you're going to have, so right now facing forward, so this would be facing forward, so left side, you're going to have them oriented like that. So the furthest front hole will be empty, second hole, and then the last hole will have that bolt in it. So it kind of offsets that forward towards the front of the vehicle. Alright, so the fitting needs to go in before the upper bracket. Make sure you're following the instructions when you're doing this, but yeah, I forgot to put that in, so I had to take the bracket back off. So make sure the fitting goes in first. Don't over tighten it. Instructions say hand tight and then 1.5 turns. That should put you pretty close to here. So alright, so we're in here. To give myself some extra room, I used a flathead and released the e-brake cable right here, and then I was able to fish it. As you can see, the e-brake cable is going to run right here. There's a notch that it's going to run through, so it doesn't go over the bracket, it goes right there. And then on this side, we're in. The exhaust is going to fight you going in, so for both of these, I put them in from this direction. So right over the diff right here. So this one I put in and then wiggled this way. And the exhaust is going to fight you, like I said, so just you gotta collapse the bag. This one on the driver's side, I came in towards the tire and kind of just moved this all out of the way, and you'll have to fight the e-brake cable, but fished it down. And then next we've got to fight these bottom brackets. We'll probably use a pry bar or something and line up our mounting holes here because I think we're going to remount these brackets and stuff that we took off. So and then we've got some brackets and U-bolts to hold it here, and same on the top. So before you get your bottom brackets on or put weight on the axle to get the top going, you're going to want to line your bolt holes up and put your bolts back in that holds your brake lines here. And then on the front side over here, the bracket for mine, this is a 17. The hole for this is actually like up here, so it kind of sits at an angle. And so the bottom bracket that they gave us here isn't quite right. These are self-tapping bolts that are back here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a 1/4-inch drill bit, and I'm just going to pop through there, and then let the bolt tap itself in so that the e-brake bracket can be held here. I just dropped this bottom bolt as a 21 out of the shock just to give myself some room here. But yeah, I'm going to drill a hole there so that our bracket can sit. Could you zip tie it? You probably could, but I'd rather just have it bolted, so that's what we're going to do. Alright, so just like that, we got our bracket held here. So we put our shock back in place and make sure everything clears. Looks like it does. So next up, if you have a fifth wheel hitch like this, a flip over ball style fifth wheel hitch, our U-bolt brackets that come with it aren't going to work. And so what Airlift has done is they've provisioned their bracket with this center hole right here. And so if you don't have it, you're going to use U-bolts and bolt it together. It's in the instructions on how to do that. If you do have a fifth wheel like this, then you're going to use the center bolt hole. So basically we're going to set this thing down and let it rest. Make sure that we're centered up over this bump stop bracket there, and then they want us to drill a hole using, I should forget the size. I'll put the size on the screen right here, but they want us to drill a hole in the frame, and then they've included some self-tapping bolts to hold the upper bracket up there. So not really a huge structural deal, because the weight of the truck's going to be on it all the time. It's mostly to keep it from moving side to side, or when you jack it up like this, to keep everything in line. So the bottom will have bolts, and it has a bracket that sits like this and grabs on, and we'll do that after the fact. They want us to get the top set up first. So I've slowly come down until we have just barely having contact here, so that I can make sure that it doesn't get caught on these lips and everything like that. So as this is coming down, I kind of want it to rest just in its natural resting position. So just kind of check it, guide it as it's coming down a little bit, and then I'm going to let it down just a little bit more now that I feel like that's kind of where it wants to sit. And then once it's a little bit weight bearing, we'll see if we can get a drill bit in there. Alright, so now you can see from underneath, this is basically going to be our guide, and we're just going to pop a hole in either side and put the drill bit, or put the self-tappers in, and it'll hold her together. So we got these all drilled and bolted. It's 5/16 size bit. You're going to need some real good bits, because this is real thick metal. You have to drill 4 of them. So got those in on both sides there, and oops, sorry, Pretty tight fit right there, so I'll hit that with some spray paint because my drill was rubbing on it. But got all 4 of those bolted in. Just kind of centered them on the frame and then drilled the holes and bolted them. You really have to reef on those self tappers as they're going in, as they're cutting the threads. So you really have to just go for it. It took quite a bit of effort. So now that we've done that, we'll get the bottom brackets in. So there's a bracket that sits here and bolts that clamp it against the axle. So we'll get those put on next. All right, so bottom brackets are on and tight. Instructions say 16 foot-pounds. Just don't get too crazy. The bracket will start to bow. So our bags are officially installed at this point. Now we just got to run the lines and everything. And then there is a little loop that's included right here for the e-brake to ride through. If you're using the U-bolts, there's an extra nut that you can use just to sandwich that on. But if not, I just had some extra hardware in the shop here, and I just made myself a through bolt hanger for it. So just make sure you got that. Make sure you got all your brake lines reattached, and bags are installed at this point. So they include this little heat shield. It's not pre-bent. You kind of have to bend it by hand, but it's super soft. You kind of want to bend it something like this, and essentially that is going to go. It includes some hose clamps, but it's essentially on the passenger side. It's going to go right here on the exhaust, just to kind of create a heat barrier. You don't want it to rub on the metal here, so you kind of have to bend it so that it doesn't, so you get a little bit of clearance there. But basically you're going to clamp it on something like that. Alright, so the heat shield is on. Something like that. I moved it down just a little bit because I figured they want the rubber more protected than the metal. Then they give you a little heat sleeve for this hose that comes off too. So your control box, they want it mounted on the frame but kind of out of the weather. So right here on the back of this truck, this part of the frame swoops up versus over here where we're right behind the running board. I've seen it mounted there too. I think for me, I'd rather mount it a little bit up. And there's multiple ways you can mount this thing. So you could mount it horizontal like this if you want to drill and use the self tappers, or you could mount it vertical and use the U-bolts that are included. A couple things to think about is your airline is going to come out the bottom of this right here. So if you mount it this way, it gives your airline quite a bit of swoop. If you mount it this way, it's a little bit higher, but your airline has to come down and then travel. So I think for me, I'm tired of drilling holes because I already had to drill those other holes for the bags. So we're just gonna go right here and put it as high as we can, and we're gonna put a U-bolt on it to hold it together. We're gonna relocate our inlet filter, which connects here. They want that in a dry, less dirty as possible location. I know some people put them in the cab or put them in the engine bay. It's a pretty long run for this truck. The picture that they have just shows it kind of just mounted right here-ish. It comes with a little push lock type of a deal, and I was just playing around, and there is a hole in the fender well. Looks just like this hole. Up top, just to give you an idea where that's at, so you got your wheel all the way up in there, that it clicked into perfectly, and I think that's going to be a really nice safe place for that filter. So we'll run our line down and connect it into here, and we'll just secure it with some zip ties along the way, and I think that'll be a perfect spot for our filter. So the kit comes with these little press-in zip tie holders, which are real nice. This is basically how I have my filter routed. And It's a 1/4 inch drill bit, so I just popped a new hole right there, 1/4 inch, through one of those little zip tie holders in, and we've got our filter located up there. So that is the filter relocation. So next part is putting a Schrader valve in. So the pump will do all of the, pumping and load leveling and everything like that. But if it fails, or you blow a fuse, or you got power outage and you need to get to your get the air in or out of your bags, you'll need a Schrader valve. You can put the Schrader valve pretty much wherever you want. It comes with the kit, and you just drill a I think it's a 5/16 hole, and it'll go. I like to hide them here in the fuel tank spot. We have our, I ended up putting it over here. I kind of tried putting it here, and it stuck out a little bit too far for my comfort. I felt like it would get in the way of filling, so put it over here. It's out of the way. I had an extra nut because it wants you to put 2 of them if you're not running a controller. So I put a nut on the back to kind of just brace it a little bit more. They want you to just throw their star washer, but I threw a nut and then the star washer just to give it a nice bracing. So that's how it's going to look. And then we are routed. I routed my line up through here. I put a little bit of vacuum line on some spaces that might rub. And you can do it how you want, but the way I routed mine was, still gotta clip a few of these, but basically I've got bag, heat shield. I coiled it so that it wants to come down. I attached it all here into a T. It tees over into that bag, and then it comes up over the fuel tank all the way over, and then onto this subframe here. And I threw the other T right there. It goes straight over to that line in the filler neck cap, and then comes over here, out, and I used another one of those little pop-it clips, and in. And so that's our line routing. Next is the electrical. So for our wiring, since we're set up vertically here, it's going to come up, and then I cleaned off a spot. Make sure that you clean it with a grinder or something, and then they came with a self-tapper to put the pump ground. And then there's a pump power wire that is here, and the pump power wire that is on the harness that is here that I still need to connect. I'll do that probably very last. But then I was gonna run it just up this side right here, but I got about 3/4 of the way up and realized the harness stops because the DPF and the cat and all that is up there, and it gets real hot. So I ended up following the same path as I did for our hose, and I went right over this subframe right here, and it comes out right up here, and I just attached it to this harness that runs all the way down the side of the truck here, and then it will come up as soon as I have the vehicle down. I can get in the engine bay. I'll feed those wires up into there. So, but that's where I'm at right now. Basically, just have to connect these wires into the battery and the fuse boxes, and then give her a test. So down here in this fender well, I ran some loom on the wire. Probably should have, in hindsight, I probably should have loomed the whole thing, but Airlift doesn't say to, and they don't include any. I had a little bit of loom, so I had enough loom to run it kind of just here over all these little sharp metal pieces and stuff, and I'll secure that up so that it's like so. But I have that run up basically, see if you can see it, basically tight with the rest of the harnesses. Hard to see down there, sorry. And then I'm going to bring it back along this fuse box and over here to the battery. So they include this inline fuse here that we're going to cut and splice into this red wire, and it's basically going to be from fuse, so it'll go battery through the fuse into this red wire. Black wire will go right here. I'll see if I can find a nut that threads right onto that. That'll make that easy. There's already a pass-through right here, so I'm hoping that our wire will essentially just pass through right here and be able to jump onto one of these. And then this pink wire is a key on trigger wire, so we're gonna have to get into the fuse box and find a key on source. But basically after that, we'll tidy up with some zip ties and the install's done. So we've got our constant power here, and you could hook it to either one of these studs. This stud is after, this is a fuse here, so this feeds the fuse box and everything. I just put it here just because of clearance. It doesn't really matter since this has its own fuse. So this fuse I'm going to have tucked down here, and then I have the ground wire over here. I was able to find the nut. It's just a 10 mil standard 10 mil nut that I had laying around. And then the last piece of the puzzle is we're going to open up this fuse box and find a fuse that is key on power. Inside this fuse box here, there is a map, and number 31 on the map right here reads out that it's for an upfitter switch. You could tap into any of those other ones that are key on power, use a test light to figure it out, but for simplicity, this one with key on has power. So I'm using an add a fuse, and 5 or 10 amps is fine. This is a trigger wire. I had two 10s sitting here. So this is going there, and then I've got it spliced into our trigger wire coming out of our loom here, and that will give us our key on power. Quick note, you will need to cut a notch out. This is a sealed box, so it will smash the wire if you don't notch yourself a little spot there. So we're all wrapped up there. Sorry you can't really see how it follows down. I got it all pulled tight all along the frame and everything. There's our trigger wire coming out right here, and next we're going to go test the system.